Today's episode is sponsored by Audible.com. Audible is a seller and producer of spoken audio entertainment, information, and educational programming on the internet. Audible sells digital audiobooks, radio and TV programs, and audio versions of magazines and newspapers. To start using Audible today, please visit their website at www.audible.com. That's www.audible.com.
So sorry for the interruption, but we have a quick announcement. We've just put together a quick app to consolidate past and upcoming episodes of this show. To download the app, simply use your cell phone camera to scan the QR code on the screen. Then, simply add the app to your home screen for easy access and a better experience.
Welcome to another episode of Taking You to the Top. In this podcast, Rami spends time speaking with founders and CEOs from across the globe and asks them specific questions to learn exactly how they launched their businesses. Before we get started with today's guest, please follow Rami's Instagram account so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. If you'd like to watch previous episodes, simply click on Rami's IGTV section or scan the QR code at the beginning of this video to download the app. If you'd like to get more information and analytics about each guest, simply visit the podcast website at takingyoutoTheTop.cf. Now, let me spend a moment to introduce today's guest before Rami gets started. Today's guest is the founder and CEO of Measured Results Marketing. Measured Results Marketing helps business-to-business organizations grow by building a new or transforming their existing technology infrastructure to measure results. With fewer options for in-person communication, companies will need to better utilize the marketing and sales CRM they invested in to scale their organizations. Join Rami in welcoming him to the show. If you have any questions for our guest today, please leave them in the comments section below. That being said, we hope you enjoy today's episode. Without further ado, are you ready to take it to the top?
A few moments later.
Okay, Chris, thank you so much for joining me today. It's episode 16 of Taking You to the Top.
Good, thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to be here and happy to be able to join.
Great. So to get us started, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, maybe take us back from the beginning, tell us where you're from, where your journey started, and how that led you to becoming the founder and CEO of your company.
Yeah, I won't go back too far, but I'm in Northern Virginia, so in the DC metro area. I mean, I've always had some sort of business of one way or another. When I was a kid, I would always have the lemonade or vegetable stand and those pieces. I think, for this journey, it was really, I was working with an organization, really enjoyed connecting systems together. And so I would get bored after 6 to 8 months. And so, I worked for a startup. I seemed to choose companies that were always being acquired or bought. And so, made that decision that when I was looking for my next job, I interviewed for something like 12 positions, gotten 9 job offers, and they just did not seem like a place I would last for more than a year. And so that was sort of the impetus for getting started with this business.
Sure. So if you could tell us about your company, what you're trying to achieve, or what's your main goal with the company? That would be a good place to start.
Yeah, so I think that, a lot of companies have problems with technology. Right now, as you know, everyone's online. We're not meeting in person. We are doing everything digitally. And so, when I founded the company, the goal was really, how can you set up marketing technology stack? So HubSpot, Pardot, Marketo, Eloqua, connected to a CRM system, so Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, and build this ecosystem where you could capture everything that came in from leads, measure it to close won opportunities. And so, the role of the business is really to help companies choose the right technology to use for their organizations, or for organizations who already have tools in place, how do you fix it? how do I get leads to my sales team? Or how do I build a process now that sales is all digital? And so that's really what our focus is to build or fix technology stacks that companies either are trying to build from scratch or fix what they already have, and then help with ongoing operations. So most people don't like cleaning out databases, managing users, building lead scoring models, all of the necessary pieces to make it work. And so we also help with the ongoing maintenance or running of those solutions.
And how do you charge? Is it based on like a license, or is it sort of license plus consulting?
Yeah, so we primarily work with established software. We've built a lot of our own applications using API, but it's most times it starts with a project. So I think there's a unique thing a company needs to fix. I can't believe my leads are not going over to the sales team. We are only calling our contacts one time, and we should be calling them 4 times and emailing them 4 times.
Sure.
So it starts with a distinct project typically, and then it moves into an ongoing relationship where we are fixing different parts of the company's operations.
Okay. And is your company bootstrapped, or did you raise capital?
Bootstrapped. I'm proud to say that. I think we've been approached by organizations to be acquired, investors to make contributions to the company. I think as we are now building more software and applications, so we are a tech-enabled services company, we are considering investment, but no, we've been bootstrapped from the start. I think it's a good way to keep control if you can do it.
Absolutely.
You may not grow as fast as you'd like to, but the fact that you're sort of not spending your time answering to a board is sometimes a bit more efficient until you get to a certain size and scale.
I agree 100%. I mean, if you can stay bootstrapped, do that.
It's
you don't
not
want to
easy.
lose, equity.
Yeah, you have to be a bit more patient, but other than that, I think especially in the size organization, so there's 71 of us in total, and so
that was going to be my next question. Okay, so 71 total, and how are they broken up?
Well, so we have a core team of 10, sort of what you would expect as an organization. So head of client services, we have head of marketing automation platforms, head of sales CRM platforms, product development. We're pretty lean otherwise. So we outsource. We help companies do that from an operations standpoint. For us, all of the functions that we can outsource and be efficient, like legal, accounting, those pieces, we've outsourced those functions and gotten the right people to do it, rather than having to invest the overhead in hiring someone, even though at the size company we are, it almost makes sense to do it.
Okay, so the other 61 are outsourced?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they are professionals in that technology. So we work across 4 or 5 different platforms. And so you can't, to be expert in that, you really need to have someone who is certified. The most junior person on the team has been working in the technologies for over a decade. And so you can imagine staffing a Marketo certified consultant, a Salesforce developer, someone who can build Visualforce pages. I can't imagine. I think our payroll would be, something like 10 or $15 million if we had all of those individuals on staff. And then it's, how do you predict the type of projects you are going to get or the needs for the clients? Because there are tens of thousands of different softwares out there. So we have a really good team of independent contractors that have long-term relationships to be able to meet those needs. We'd have to probably be a $50 to $60 million revenue company to be able to afford hiring that level of resource for our team.
Absolutely. And just out of curiosity, are you hiring internationally, or are they all based in the US?
We so no, we have resources on our team that are not in the US. I think we have they're used for our own development. So all of our client work is done in North America. So we have individuals in Toronto and Montreal and
Sure.
those areas. We do have a small development team that we use ourselves that's based overseas. But I think for us, it's managing against time zone. And so that's so I'm one of those crazy people that wakes up at 5 a.m. or 5:30 every morning and goes to bed rather early. But we have we keep it North American just to manage time zones. But we do have some overseas development for some of the applications we build and such, because it's much more economical to do that.
Sure. I mean, the only reason I ask is I find most people outsource development work to Romania, for example. And so I'm trying to put together sort of a table.
I think it's interesting. I would say that for some of the services pieces, especially in the United States, the Philippines is a great option in terms of culture, customer service, and a lot of the individuals in the Philippines actually work US hours. Like I didn't believe that at first, but individuals and some companies orient their time schedules. I think for development, it depends. It's either, Mumbai, Bangalore, India, sort of formerly a lot of the Eastern European countries have teams, or it's a little bit more of a premium. But I find, again, from a language interpretation space, Ireland is not a bad place to go either in terms of developing apps or the support required for them in the English language, which is the majority of the customers or clients we work with. So it depends on what type of help you need, and each country seems to have its reputation. One is really good for tedious, repetitive tasks. Others are for software development. So it depends on what you're looking for. But anyone who touches or works with a client is all North American based. So that's sort of at least for us, it keeps it easier. I'd love to, as you know, it's much cheaper to work with someone in another country, but the premium to manage that at this point is not sort of not worth the incremental dollars, at least at the stage we are in development.
Sure.
Hopefully that helps to give you sort of some of that.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. But this next question is more like, if you were starting a company today and you want to get your first customers, what do you think, or what was your most effective marketing channel when you first started to spread the word about your company?
I mean, it's really the telephone, believe it or not. So it was, my first order of business was actually calling companies who wanted to hire me for roles. I mean, it sounds a bit audacious, but I said that I'm not interested in this position. I've decided to take another path and start my own organization. You evaluated me for this type of role. Would you consider having me do some of that work on a contract basis?
Okay.
And I actually closed some of those deals. So I work at some of those organizations I still, as a company, do work with. The second best was really LinkedIn. I mean, it was, I think people are hesitant to pick up the phone and ask and contact people they know or contact old colleagues, but they know your work, they know who you are, and so they're the most willing to help you.
Sure.
I think LinkedIn second. It's a good way to find people in a geographic area with a specific need. And then, unfortunately, online networking is not quite the same as going to events, but I went to any relevant event that I could at that point. I was doing somewhere between 5 and 7 a week. I'd go
Wow.
to meetups and lunch and learns and companies whose software I really appreciated. I would go to events or user conferences, and that was really the way that the company got seeded and got our first set of clients.
Perfect. All right. So in this next section is it's a set of questions more for the listeners who are just starting, or actually they haven't, they're trying to find an idea. So I'm trying to find problems that you face, for example, on a daily basis, something maybe that's repetitive, something that you just wish you could pass on to another company to deal with for you. So, I mean, over the past few weeks, have you had any sort of persistent problem or something that you wish could be fixed?
Yeah, I mean, it's, now that we've moved all online, a lot of companies have cut budget, and their main priorities are, how do I retain my existing clients? And then how do I prospect to people who there's still a market or they can make investment in services? And so, through that lens or through that context, I mean, I would say for us, it's really managing growth. And so, I would love, I mean, it's a lot of work, as you may know, to manage a services company where you've got a whole host of things organizations need your help with. I'd love to have a magic wand and have a master dashboard that would tell me, how many hours were worked and what's the margins on those projects, and tell me the probability of close beyond our ability to figure out that today with artificial intelligence or some sort of tools, and then pulling information or having additional ideas to build relationships online. And so without the benefit of meeting in person, what are some ideas in order to help facilitate those relationships, network, learn more about someone without having to go through a pretty complex process now, right? So you would look someone up on LinkedIn and understand what interests are and see if they're part of communities and posting what challenges are and see if you could potentially help them. It's particularly difficult to do that work today where previously that would happen organically. You'd meet someone and talk about something and realize that you both liked boating or getting out on the water. How do you build that relationship or have some of that background in the context of these calls where people are very constrained with their time? And so there are applications like that would be useful, or ways to consolidate. I would call it like an operations dashboard. A lot of companies have, here's how our online campaigns are performing, here's sort of metrics and operations, but they all live in different systems. It's really hard to get a full picture of an entire business in one system. You typically have to piece that together. I'd love to be able to do that. Log into my computer. Here are your 5 different dashboards with the 5 key metrics, and then do a better job of predicting the future than I or the sales team are currently able to do today.
Sure. And would that be worth paying for if somebody came up with something like that?
Oh, absolutely. It would save us hours and hours and hours. So, I mean, I'd love to do a time study internally to see how much time we use to pull metrics and understand the business. But yes, I mean, that would be worth quite a bit. It would probably save at least a day a week in resources across the team to pull that information or do those pieces. So yeah, it would absolutely be worth investing. But the challenge is, how can you easily pull all of that stuff together and customize it enough for the business that we have in order for it to make sense.
Sure. Okay, great. So let's wrap up with the famous five. Number one, what's your favorite business book?
I like Traction now. I'm reading the revised version of it. So it's about essentially measuring your business against certain areas and how do you improve. I think that's a really good framework, and I use that quite a bit. And so I'm enjoying sort of reading or rereading that now.
It's called Traction Now or Traction?
It's called Traction.
Traction. Okay. Number two, is there a CEO you're following or studying?
No, I'd say that I'm relying on a board of advisors. So there's not a single CEO that I'm following. I'm looking at and seeing sort of trends in market, but I'm fortunate to have a group of 5 to 6 advisors that I can really lean on, and that have had experiences starting services companies, starting software companies, and really leaning on them heavily to help or get questions answered. So I manage it that way rather than following an individual. I have tons I follow via LinkedIn, but this is sort of a group that is that I can kind of count on to get advice and talk through some challenges with.
Great. Number three, what's your favorite online tool for growing your business?
I think it's LinkedIn. I mean, I talked about that previously. I would say that roughly a third of our net new acquisitions or business come through that tool. And so it is very helpful. We invest in the sales, the sales version of that tool. I don't remember exactly what they're calling it now, but
it's the Sales Navigator.
Sales Navigator. And so it's great. And then we integrate it with Salesforce and our other tools to find, contacts in these organizations. So it's been great since the start.
Great. Number four, if you could give your 20-year-old self a piece of advice, what would that be? Or what did you wish you knew when you were 20?
I wish when I was 20, I would trust my judgment a bit better when things were not working out. I think sometimes I was a bit too patient. I know that's hard to say to a 20-year-old, right? As a 20-year-old, I wasn't particularly patient and had really high expectations and really quickly. But I would say that you should really look at what you're doing and how you're doing it. And if it doesn't feel right, it's not in the direction you want to go, as a 20-year-old, you have lots of time to experiment and try things. And so if it's not a fit, don't just stay with what you're doing. Try something else, because that's really the time that you can take those risks and try things without having to worry about things like, I have a family, I have a young son. There's a lot more obligations that you have that make you a little bit more risk averse than you are when you're 20.
And number five, how many hours of sleep do you get every night?
Between 7 and 8. I mean, for me, sleep is really important. I find that if I don't sleep enough, I'm not making as good of decisions. I'm not as alert and focused. And, in this role, there's a lot of people counting on you. And so, one of the best things I can do is get a good night's sleep. So that's the other bit of advice, unsolicited, I would say, is that, I understand, especially in the States, it's not as much outside of the States, but it's still prevalent that, the more you work, the harder you work, the more you'll advance and the more quickly you'll do it. I think that getting proper rest and thinking clearly will save you all sorts of extra hours that you're not sleeping. I can't say that some weeks, it's definitely a push to get things done, but by and large, sleep is something you should not skimp on.
Right. I mean, I guess that just leads to smarter decisions, more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. If you're up, I mean, I've had, I mean, we still have those nights as a big prospect or a client, and we need to stay up late to get something done, or I work with a proposal team to get something done and they want me to review it at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night. So you do that from time to time, but I'll tell you, when I look at that work the next morning at like 5:30 or 6 a.m., sometimes I'm wondering what we were thinking. Like, why didn't we just wait until the next morning and work on it while we were fresh? Like, some of the words don't make sense, or some of those bits are just not nearly as they could have been if we were just waited until the next morning.
Sure. All right, Chris, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and hopefully in a year's time, maybe we can have a follow-up call to see where things have gone, what's changed. That would be really interesting.
No, I really appreciate the invite and being part of this. And if anyone has any questions about sort of my company, how we got there, and some of the resources, I'm happy to be a resource for them. We've had a lot of help in terms of getting to the position we are as an organization. And I always like to give back and help either entrepreneurs that are trying to take a similar path.
Sure. Really, thank you so much, Chris.
Great, thanks.
Today's episode is sponsored by Audible.com. Audible is a seller and producer of spoken audio entertainment, information, and educational programming on the internet. Audible sells digital audiobooks, radio and TV programs, and audio versions of magazines and newspapers. To start using Audible today, please visit their website at www.audible.com. That's www.audible.com.